Since Buddha's whole search was to find answers to our suffering, we need to comprehend suffering. That's the first step. So, there are three categories of suffering that Buddha describes in his teachings, and I'm going to ask you to think about a discontent or outright suffering you may have felt, and if you can put it into one of these categories, in that process, you will increase the understanding of your suffering. That's the first step. So, the three categories are these. Category number one is when we have something in our body or in our mind that is unpleasant, that we do not want, such as it could be aches and pains in the body, or it could be some very unpleasant negative feelings in our mind. We know this kind of suffering, and that's basically what we experience when we say suffering. Suffering number two is we are happy, we are joyful, we have something we really like, but guess what? Nothing is permanent, and one day or the other, the nature of the thing that gives a joy may definitely changes. The intensity, or sometimes outright the joy itself, is gone. For example, we may love spending time with our kids, but they grow up. We may love our house, but houses deteriorate or something can happen to them. Relationships. Think about the times when you were used to, let's say, living in a house that had only fans and you were able to tolerate the heat, but then you bought an AC and you started loving it. Now when you go back to a house that has no AC, it's going to create suffering in you, right? And so that's the type of suffering which is something pleasant but it's gone. Suffering number three is called because of sanskaras in Sanskrit, sankharas in Pali. In English, we can call it mental patterns. We are born with certain tendencies, and then our upbringing, our culture gives us certain patterns of behavior. What happens to us, we may not have control over it. But when it comes to us, we react to it in our familiar mental patterns. For example, let's say somebody says something hurtful to you. You may have a pattern of brooding over it, not being able to say anything to that person on their face or not communicating with them, but you come home, you brood over it, you obsess over it, you feel very hurt, you talk to your friends, or you sometimes don't. So that is a type of suffering because of our mental patterns. And guess what? The third type of suffering is sometimes the hardest to resolve. First of all, we have to recognize our mental patterns that are creating difficulties. And even when we know it, to get rid of them, to change them, is a lot of work. So recognize what category of suffering you have in your life. And then for the timing, just have infinite patience and compassion for it, because this is a normal human thing. And guess what? Buddha's teachings may give you answer to it. But first, understand suffering on this level.